HR analytics can provide more value by becoming more agile. Agile has become popular in software development, but has since then grown in popularity in other areas of the business. Agile principles can be applied to all areas of work, and this includes HR and HR analytics. Let's take a look.
In this lesson, we will talk about the people analytics cycle and Agile principles applied to HR. Hence the title Agile HR Analytics. This is a picture you've probably already seen in the book. If you haven't, I highly recommend you reading the section from chapter 6 onwards about the people analytics cycle and the steps it involves. I'll shortly walk you through the different steps and then we go into Agile principles applied to these different steps. First of all, when you start with HR analytics, you want to tackle a big problem for the company. Why? Because you really add value when you help to solve that problem. So that's why step 1 is all about asking the right questions. And that is all about going to HR and predominantly going to the business and saying, hey, what are the main problems that keep you up at night? And thinking for yourself, how can we help with HR data and finance data and all the other kinds of data you have at your disposal to solve this? And you will find that some of the problems that companies run into don't feel like they're really related to people analytics at first sight. But then if you look deeper, it all boils down to having the right people on the right place, having business continuity, and that has everything to do with people in the end. If you know the problem that the business is struggling with, you can look towards data selection. What data do you actually need in order to solve this problem? If you have selected the data, you can start cleaning the data, which is all about connecting different data sets, making sure that all the labels are right, so you don't have a label with senior manager and a different label with SR manager. Like all those different labels can act as confounds in your data, and you don't want that. Fourth, you can analyze the data. And step 5 is the interpretation and execution. So you have your analysis, you have your results, you look at them and you think, hey, that's weird. And you go back to your question, you go back to your data, you check, hey, did I do everything right? Or did I miss something in the data? Did I do the wrong analysis, etc.? So usually you walk this process a number of times and then you come up with a really interesting finding, and that's the finding that you communicate to the rest of the business. So that's the people analytics cycle, and you can read all about it in chapter 6 and onwards in the book The Basic Principles of People Analytics. Now, how does Agile apply to HR analytics? Before we talk about that, we'll talk about the difference between waterfall and Agile. Some people will already know this, but for others this will be totally new, so I'll talk about this briefly. In software development, you had the classical waterfall approach. And what happened is that when a business wanted to program some software, they set a number of business requirements that the software needs to comply with. Then the technical software developers looked at that dossier, because usually it was quite a big stack of papers. They looked at it and they said, hey, what technical design features should this have? So they translated the business requirements to technical design features. They started developing it, and this could take half a year, even longer. They had a small testing period of a few weeks, maybe a month, and then they deployed it and the software was sent to the customers. Now what happened is that because the development period took so long, that a lot of errors, potential errors, slipped in. On the one hand, technical errors, but on the other hand, the technical design often didn't comply with the requirements of the business. And all those defects came out in the testing period. And the testing period was usually rather small, so there was not much time to fix those errors. And then in the end, you had deployment where dysfunctional software was deployed. Agile is an approach where a lot of the big risk of the waterfall method were cancelled out by running small sprints. And on the screen you see 3 different sprints, where the business came with a number of requirements. This was put in a design, this was developed, this was tested, and that's a sprint of about, say, 2 weeks, maybe a month, and then it was deployed. And the business got the software, and the business could test the software with the customers, and they found out that there were a number of errors, or that the software didn't really fit with the expectations of the customer. So they brought that back to the software developers. So they had new requirements, the software was designed, developed, tested again, And each and every time you had a better version with a number of extra add-ons that happened during a sprint. So on the one hand, these cumulative outcomes ended up delivering more value than just one big outcome at the end. In addition, the risk of development was placed at the different outcomes. So it was not that after 1.5 years of development you have one big outcome and it could potentially fail. No, you have sprints of say a month, and every month you get a new and different outcome, and that outcome can be tested, and if the outcome fails, you just make a better version of the software and you fix it immediately. So the risk is transferred to the beginning. Long story short, this Agile approach is summarized in a number of Agile principles. And this is from the Agile Manifesto from 2001. What I did is I picked 4 of the most relevant principles of the Agile Manifesto and I applied them to HR Analytics. The first principle, our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. Now, HR Analytics is no software, but you see where it goes. Welcome changing requirements even late in the development. Agile processes harness change for the customer's competitive advantage. Simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done, is essential. At regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. Now, I want to apply these principles to HR Analytics. What you often see happen is that HR Analytics processes and projects are really big. You have a new HR Analytics department that's early on, that still has to learn a lot, but they start with a really big project that applies to everyone in the company. They try to use all the data they can find. They have to clean it, and before they come up with a tangible result, it takes really long. So basically they have one big outcome at the end. And what I want to argue for is split it up, make it stupid simple. The Agile principles apply to HR. First of all, start small. And think of the Pareto principle, 80-20. 80% of the result comes from 20% of the work. And that applies to the business problem that you tackle. There's multiple business problems going on at any given time in any business. Go for the business problems that really add value. You need to solve a big business problem and go for the problem that really adds value to everyone. So don't try to solve all problems, solve the biggest problem. Second, go for a small target group. Especially when you think in terms of strategic workforce planning, for example, the 80-20 rule really applies. The core of the business, the most essential people, add the most value to the company. Focus on that core team. Because if you do and you get relevant findings for them, that's good for the entire business and it saves you a lot of time. So apply the 80-20 rule to the target group that you focus on. And go for the core employees, like the employees that are really valuable for the company, and the employees that are more in staff functions that don't really add that much value. Of course, they still add value, but they don't add as much value. Leave them out of your initial analyses. And third, the data that you use. You can try to do an analysis that uses literally all the data that you have. Don't. Look at the literature, select the most relevant data sources, put them in your model. And if you come up with an explanatory model or with a model that has sufficiently explanatory value, then you have already done a great job. And then at a later point, you can add different additional variables. So keep the data small. Focus on adding value. Add value to the customer. And in this case, your customer is probably the business and sometimes also HR. Keep the customer in mind and add value for that customer. And the last 2 points are keep it simple and learn continuously. I would rather see that you do 3 different analyses on a really specific core team in your company and in that way solve a business problem and have some awesome learnings than that you do one really big analysis that goes for everyone in the firm, because your learning capacity will be really diminished. You'll have to aggregate way more data, you'll spend way more time on data cleaning, and then your analysis will probably point out that the problem is more relevant for some groups rather than other groups. And if you have initially focused on the core groups that are really the center of the problem that you're analyzing, you can add way more value. So keep it simple, and think in agile short sprints. Plan short-term wins. Because what you want to do is you want to go towards adding value really, really quickly. Don't get stuck in a data cleaning process that can take years and years and years in order to clean all the data. Only select the relevant data for a very specific analysis, then do that analysis, learn from it, and then gather some additional data, learn some more, get even more interesting results, and run that process again and again and again. So in summary, keep it small, use small sprints, learn continuously, and plan your short-term wins.